He says there is no restart button in life, and she claims that regrets won't change the situation. After which Gray says that he would try to live his life without regrets. He bought the game after seeing his friend play it. He knew little about it and hadn't even had time to unpack it. When he explains that the game is a team RPG, on the left it says that it is a bright world of sword and magic. The game features a variety of heroines, and their choice determines marriage. The default hero's name is Isuka. Gray then reveals that he is often mistaken for a bandit because of his stern gaze. He explains that he doesn't know his role in the game and has decided to be a simple adventurer, and the two bow to him in respect. Following this, adventurers are a noble profession, gathering daily in guilds to accept and solve various tasks, and this is their whole essence. He explains that adventurers are categorized by rank from E to A. The test for rank B is to complete 3 quests in a row, as well as subranks and other rules that he doesn't care about. Meanwhile, he has been diligently increasing his rank and is proficient in various magic, including attack, healing, buffs and debuffs, as well as a sword. Gray is a high-ranking adventurer, ready to help anywhere. The man orders them to stop standing in the Dajiza, pointing out an attempt to sell children. The woman says she's called the guards. And then he says that each of them judges a book by its cover, and at the same time exclaims, "God!" A man asks to heal a family member with his magic, and a woman pleads with him. Gray recalls how it all came to this. The man refuses flowers and is kicked by Gray. At the same time, he explains that he will buy 1 restoration magic, and the man asks if they have parents or siblings, to which the woman replies that they do not. He says they don't have parents or a real family and one of their friends is sick, and Gray listens. Moreover, restoration magic only heals wounds and is available only to the priests of the church. The two people bow deeply, and he merely nods in response. Gray says he's unsure of his abilities and asks to be brought to his place if they're willing. The children are surprised and ask him to hold off on paying, explaining that they live in the same city. He also explains that he's an adventurer. They haven't introduced themselves, but he claims he's now obligated to help since there are no adults among them, and he's decided to help them. He's surprised by Isuka's name. Fio and Isuka introduce themselves and say they're glad to meet you. In the end, he decides to act according to his conscience and help the main character, even at the cost of his own life. He announces his arrival. She promises to explain everything and he agrees. After which Gray explains that it's on the outskirts of the slums, and she says that's interesting. He is surprised that she went with him, and she asks what is wrong. When she thanks him for helping the family, Gray explains that he is not a bad person and would not do such a thing, despite the possibility of capturing and selling everyone into slavery. He informs her that a sick family member is here. The woman asks if they can cure him, and he assures her he will do everything possible. She then apologizes and explains that she didn't introduce herself. Her name is Ariamel. He explains that it's Nina, and she explains that it's Lottie. Gray explains that Stella is a vampire who is not suitable for either humans or purebred vampires. He then goes on to claim that if Isuka and the others didn't know about her vampire nature, then they wouldn't have asked a stranger for help in the first place. He insists Stella is fine, not sick, just exhausted. He explains that vampires lack food, which is why they thirst for blood. Stella, however, did not attack the children. Meanwhile, Gray asks what he usually eats, and he explains that it's easy to solve because she needs to eat well. He says the church food supply is gone and offers to sell flowers to buy bread. The man asks for forgiveness and to forget. Then Gray explains that the church distributes food once a week, and he'll provide them with food for a month. His magic is powerless here, and the only thing that can help is good nutrition. They're surprised and say it's too much, but they want to help. He thanks everyone for their help, and she listens silently. Nearby, another boy and a girl holding a baby boy watch them intently. At the same time, he explains that he will go for groceries and will regret it if he abandons the children to their fate, and the other laughs and warns that they will become victims of his desires. He warns that heavy foods can be harmful to stomachs, so it's best to start with bread and fruit. Furthermore, Gray admits his puzzled position, while another man asks him about the children in the cabin. addressing him as bro. He forbids anyone to touch himself with dirty hands, then screams, after which several people fall to the ground in pain. Additionally, Gray threatens to feed the children to the harpies if they have a bad thought, while another character expresses surprise. He explains that the prey is devoured starting from the feet, so that it doesn't die. He is surprised, says his face is more frightening than his threats, and receives a blow. Gray ends up asking why they approached him, and the other man replies that they thought he was just like them. He yells that they didn't teach him to judge a book by its cover, and the man explains that it's not because of the elementary schools in this world. Gray then explains that the city he lives in is called Bastic. It's popular due to its location on the road between two countries. It's home to a large adventurers guild offering a variety of quests and rewards, allowing for a successful adventurer's career. He says it's time to cook, but explains what he's going to cook, and they're surprised. When Gray says he's not the type to do that and asks to wait a bit, the children ask for help starting a fire. She tells Nina to wait with her, and he calls her fine and says Nina does too. Then he nods as she pats his head. Gray then explains that the orphans are not as obedient as he expected, and notices that the children can do something, which surprises him. He ordered her to remain still until he finished. He noticed that she was tired, but was glad she wasn't afraid of him. The girl, surprised, called him Daddy. She then asks if she will be upset if she says no, and Gray asks Nina not to interfere with him. She says he asks what to do, and she explains that the food is ready and invites everyone to sit at the table. Meanwhile, he explains that he ends up eating with them, and he is surprised at how delicious it is. Gray is silent, and the children explain that they have already eaten. And then he asks to wipe it, and the man replies that he will too, after which he thanks him. Gray says it's delicious. Stella explains that she needs to eat and offers to eat. Stella is surprised and starts eating. At the same time, she asks him to take his time and leave the cleaning to them. He explains that she has the strength to eat, and the other man agrees. Gray advises against being so formal. She thanks him for the food and says it was delicious. He also claims that time will fix everything, then decides to return home, believing that this is enough. The next morning arrives. Gray explains that they will stick to a diet and treat her to delicious meat. He shows various recipes with pictures, and the woman thanks him. He also explains that he won't be able to come every day. She explains that 3 others are still asleep and suggests using her prescriptions. He asks if she slept well, and she explains that Nina was a little hysterical, and he reassures her that it's no problem. Gray believes the mission to eliminate the Elder Orc is right for him. He explains that his adventurer's license was revoked long ago for extortion, theft, murder, and child trafficking. Others say he's the man from the rumors. He ends up explaining that he knows the feeling of reaching E+ rank and advises remembering his roots, pointing to a goblin-slaying quest, while down below the leader yells that they can't fight here and accuses the enemy of being a corpse. 3 guys bet on Gray. He claims that if Gray draws a gun, he'll have grounds for self-defense. Sasha suggests starting with a pre-fight assignment, pointing out that he started it and isn't to blame. After which, Gray announces that the request from the village near Basticum is paid at the standard rate for a senior orc. The village chief thanks Gray for accepting the request, and Marina greets him. The man expressed a desire to begin the task, but the other suggested waiting until morning because of the sunset. Marina admitted she was afraid and felt it was necessary to act that night. When the man told Marina that she was the most beautiful girl in the village and offered to spend the night with the adventurer, the woman replied that everyone in the village would help raise the child if she had one. She apologizes to Gray and explains that she cannot refuse because the villagers raised her after the loss of her parents. Then Gray is silent, and Marina confirms her name, to which he says, "Hello." She promises to take care of Gray that night. He explains that among adventurers there are lustful ones, but not all think only about sex, and refuses her. Following this, Gray explains that he will go to bed and order the residents to be told, and she reassures him that she will carry out the task if necessary. The man assures her that after this, she will be able to hunt in the forest and return to her normal life. She understands, and he apologizes for the intrusion and wishes her sweet dreams. Meanwhile, she asks what's wrong with Gray and explains that he said he doesn't need her, but he will complete the task, and the others are happy for Marina and say that he is so kind. She hopes he will appreciate it and explains that it will happen the next day. Then Marina announces that she brought Gray breakfast. He thanks her for cooking and says it was delicious, and Marina apologizes for last night. Gray warns him to be careful, and the man says he is the only one he can count on. At the same time, he demands to go first, and the village thanks Gray for killing the orc and ensuring the safety of the forest. He explains that this is proof and shows the severed head of an orc. Besides, Gray is already convinced and asks him to put his head down. He thanks her for the offer, but is in a hurry. The girl offers to stay another night and cook, after which she lowers her head. He thanks and wishes to take care of himself, then thinks about growing his assets and implementing his plan to build his dream home. Besides, he has been living in Bastic for a long time and believes that it is time to settle down, and Gray claims that thanks to him, good people will grow up. The next morning, at Bastic's hotel, they show him the doll he is holding in his hand. In the end, he explains that the doll is worn out and even if it is patched up, it will break again, and the innkeeper says that only alchemy can help here. The man asks Gray if he's going somewhere right after work. Gray replies that he realized it was a woman and that he's her age. After which he informs Lena that her father is up to his old tricks again. The man is surprised, and Lena shouts that she's repeatedly asked him not to bother visitors with his stories. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. The man explains that they should share their exploits, and the woman screams that calling Lena was against the rules. When the man asks Lux if that's Gray in there, Lux explains that it's an alchemist's workshop. He wants to fix the doll and asks if he can. The other man explains that it's not quite right, but agrees to fix it for money up front. He then explains that he would like the Elder Orc's ingredient and demands the eggs and head, and Gray explains that he can forgive and take the failed sample, as it can produce an expensive healing potion. He says it's the outskirts of the slums. The child screams that he is daddy, and the man agrees. The woman then apologizes to Gray and explains that little Nina has been crying the entire time he's been gone. Gray consoles her, saying he's here and everything is fine. He says that her father should make sure that he stroked her well. He is happy about her recovery, and she is surprised that she called him father. Meanwhile, Gray explains to Nina the reason for the delay, and she is surprised. She says that Atyachan is beautiful now. He smiles. The three observers are surprised. Then the woman thanks Gray, and he replies it's nothing. The man offers Fio some of his mushrooms, and she's surprised she didn't ask. Another man remarks that Isuka looks like a normal boy, and the woman offers to cook something. He doubts the hero's ability to save the world, but is willing to help. She wants them to continue living peacefully. At the same time, Gray explains that he is going to look for a new home and asks Nina to wait for him here, thanking her for being a good girl. He expressed his desire to give all the children their own rooms and a large hall, as well as to purchase a house for the adventurer crew. After this, he said goodbye, and they wished him to take care of himself. He also says that he is meeting him again, and Gray asks if he was able to buy the Elder Orc's ears. He asks where a good store is, complains about the delay with the task, shows his head and asks not to throw it away. He also claims he didn't kill the Elder Orc, calling him a virgin. The other asks Graysan to stop. Gray asks Melinda to replace him, and she agrees. She asks Senpai not to leave and what to do with her head. The man explains that everything is fine and says that if he doesn't kick her, she'll become completely lazy. Eventually, Gray explains that they are there and this house suits his needs. He says this is the former home of the Valkyrie team. She then informs him that the Valkyrie A+ team is all female and is approaching S rank in Bastic. He explains that they've moved, so the place is empty, and notices that 2 are on the roof, 2 in the alley and 1 behind him. He says they came into his life and are out to kill, and the hooded man calls himself Gray. When he explains that the web sign is the same as the bandits and warns that he will not survive, he asks if they have come to kill him and calls it Perfilia. The man declares that he is about to die. Gray demands an answer, then screams and strikes. He then says that he will kill the interlocutor if he is not from the greedy spider, and that you should not expect an easy death if he is from it, since he is in a hurry to prepare dinner for the children. She tells Gray she's glad he's back, and the child greets him as his dad. Gray explains that he's home. He then explains that he'll finish them off when the children go to bed, and that he's found the rest of the greedy spider's members. The woman says, "Ugh." The child asks to be picked up, and the man replies, "Hmm." The man offers to sit on his hands and come closer. The woman turns to Arya's sister and greets Gray. Meanwhile, he considers it unfair and she agrees. The man only nods in response. The child asks to wait his turn, and Gray explains that he bought a new house. They'll move in 2 days when everything is ready. And then he says that he won't work today, and the man asks if he works for Daddy. Gray explains that they will be living together, apologizes for disturbing him, and suggests they sleep. At the same time, he explains that he doesn't want her to worry and get hurt. She asks him to tell her why he decided to become their daddy, and he replies that he'll be there soon and asks her to take care of herself. Gray says Dad has a lot of work ahead of him and hopes he'll be taken to the lair. He explains that he'll be taken to the lair too, and the two beg to be released, promising to change and live by their conscience. He also explains that they need to be dealt with quickly, otherwise the children will worry. Leaving them alive means leaving the children at risk. The man asks who he is, noticing that he doesn't seem like a kind person. He explains that he's an adventurer and asks them not to worry about it. He reports that he found N, and the man replies, "We're screwed." He also claims that a blow to the head is the fastest and most effective method. The man confesses to killing the boys, prompting demands for an explanation, while someone screams and begs for mercy. He reports that this is a typical bandit lair, the path to the boss will take some time, and warns that they are under attack. Eventually, the man reveals that he's a former high-ranking adventurer and will teach them to fear him. Gray explains that he's not as good as Gans's, noting that he's a killer, but still strong, and asks what's wrong with their gang. He shouts that it's him, then explains that it's cold and demands to know where the boss is. The man, frightened, agrees and tries to run away, after which he offers to speed up one of the harpies. Gray reminds him of the veracity of the reports and asks who he is to the children. He replies that for them he is. The father says time is short and it's time to finish. The man sitting there replies that it's clear he's gone mad and asks forgiveness for all his sins in the next life. When Gray talks to Sonia, she explains that she is having difficulty breathing. She says he's tired and needs to get some sleep. He thinks he'll have to get up. The man explains that they talked about how much he cared for her. The woman says she didn't expect him to leave and notes that they've lived here for a long time. Gray then reveals that she was frightened by his face when they first met and is surprised that she doesn't remember it, while the man explains that she was very young then. The man offers to help. They agree. The children decide to wash themselves and are happy about this opportunity. The woman then explains that this is a public bathhouse, and he's asking for private rooms for boys and girls. Gray explains that he always wanted to wash his hair after Lutz and begins washing Isuk's. He says everything is fine, but it makes him uneasy while the man washes his hair. Meanwhile, she apologizes for the delay. He insists that everything is fine, and the other boy has fallen asleep in his arms. The salesperson asks what clothes she's interested in. Gray says any children's clothing will do, but the woman admits she has no sense of style and asks for help choosing. And then the girl is happy that she is like a princess. He explains that it is beautiful, and the others look at the new house in surprise. She suggests they take a look around and calls Nina and Lottie. Nina invites Dad in and warns him about the stairs, but Lottie asks him to wait. At the same time, Gray warns them to be careful and explains that the private rooms are on the second floor. First come, first served. Gray thanks them. She says she'll wait until everything is chosen and suggests Gray go ahead. He explains there's no need to hold back, because they're a family. She explains that she still needs time to adjust. Gray also suggests the babies sleep with him or Ariamel. She agrees, and he's surprised by the size of the room. He's prepared clothes, food, and shelter for the children and thinks everything will be fine until they want their own rooms. He wonders what will happen after school. He also reveals that he killed his boss before he could say anything, and that he learns about his children's past as they live together, without intending to pry into family secrets. Gray explains that they've always slept together and find it difficult to fall asleep alone. He invites them in and says there's not enough room on the bed, so he'll lay out a futon on the floor. Then he bids them all good night. In the end, he tells Isuka to get up, explaining that everyone has already started breakfast, and Isuka apologizes and promises to get up soon. Gray says Isuka likes to sleep in the morning and is smart, and he started saying good morning to everyone almost a month after moving in. After which Nina says that she loves to eat, and he explains that they have a sweet tooth, Stella. Gray and the baby ask for something to eat. The man thanks Ariamel for the food, and she asks him to leave the dishes and explains that she keeps a copy of the recipe so as not to ruin the original. As he explains that Ariamel can write and read, which is unusual for children in this world, he also explains how his life changed dramatically after the battle near Bastik. Gray said they needed to quickly destroy all the goblins and return home. He suggested they return to Nina and the others to read books instead of wasting time on him. He then says he will by 7 and the woman thanks him. Gray says he's home and the other man says good night. He then explains that his family is gone and he couldn't break his senseless habit. The girl explains that he's been buying sweets for a week now, which are unhealthy, and asks him to stop bringing them so often. The man says he thought Ariamel was like an older sister, but she's like a mother. He then agrees and the girl offers. He tells Isuka that let's tell him and Gray asks what happened. Meanwhile, he says they want to become adventurers, and she asks to teach them fencing and magic. The man asks what exactly. He says they want to be useful to Aria's sister. The man explains that Isuka and Fio feel like parasites, but for him, their existence is already happiness. The woman is surprised by his words. And then Gray says that he has no right to refuse, but suggests postponing it for a little while, and he explains that the work of an adventurer is dangerous, so it is worth training them to stand up for themselves, despite Ariel's objections. She talks about Fio and Isuki, and he offers to help them achieve their goals and discuss their concerns. Meanwhile, Gray reports the return of the Valkyrie team, which cleared the dungeon. The news has been floating around for several days, and the Adventurers Guild is buzzing. He sighs and he explains that today they need to go to a different registrar, and she agrees. Additionally, Gray reports the long downtime of dungeons inhabited by problematic monsters, including the possibility of special individuals appearing, and announces his intention to hunt goblins. He says magic is useless against a goblin. It can be killed with a blow or a slash. Skill or gift is something intangible that some people are born with. Besides, there are heroes, saints, and masters of various skills among both humans and monsters, and it doesn't matter to God whether you are a monster or a human, but the church would make a fuss if it heard about such a thing. Gray notes that Ariamel is a skilled cook, caring, and attractive, which will attract men. He also warns that her boyfriend will have to practice to avoid losing his head. Gray completes the task, and Ariamel merely hiccups and moves on to the next one. In the end, she is glad that they brought only the necessary parts, and he explains that he did not always bring the heads, and asks if the Valkyries have returned. Gray says the lunch was delicious and welcomes her back. She says she'll make another lunch tomorrow. After which he explains that he doesn't know how to play cards, and the 3 people sitting nearby say that this evening will be fun. Gray says it's late and asks what they want. When Amelia says she hasn't seen Gray in a while and thanks Melinda for the information that he was on the 1st floor, Gray explains that he is grateful to Melinda. He asks Gray to invite them inside, explaining that they stand out, and the woman offers to make tea and asks if they know Gray. Then the man invites us into the house, where several people are already sitting. The man explains to Gray that they were on the same team. Gray says the children are actually his, and the girl sharply demands to know who their mother is. The child then calls the man Daddy. He explains that he has snot all over his shirt, and the woman says, "Amy, don't scare the kids." She explains that Gray already had children when he was on their team. She asks him not to reveal who he dated back then. The man asks how much of a vampire the girl is. Gray remains silent, and the woman apologizes. Meanwhile, he assures her that everything is fine and they won't cause any harm. She's surprised, but he confirms that everything is fine. He talks about his first meeting with her and how they began to live together. And then she says that he always helped the weak and the needy, and he explains that, despite the fact that he looks like a bandit, he loves it when she says things that irritate him. He asks about the house, surprised how they found out about the purchase. She says they'll pay half for any house in Bastic he buys for the team. At the same time, Gray says that a home for the team means joining it, and the woman adds that it was necessary to check the team members. He saw 6 children and was surprised that they were listening to him so attentively. He began rubbing his eyes, trying to explain something. Besides, he calls her a reliable child, and she's surprised they don't call him Mom. Gray says the bandit is strong enough to defeat them and will take them home, but she replies that's enough for today and apologizes for bothering him. The woman reports that the criminal gang was dismantled a month ago, and order has improved. He thanks her for the hospitality, and the woman bids Ariamel farewell, surprised by the word, friend. In addition, Gray warns not to overdo it, and he asks to teach them magic next time. He says they need to learn to read first, then master fencing and magic. Ariamel can teach them to read. For him, a supportive family is more valuable than expensive food and jewelry. He feels capable of anything for that. In the end, the woman explains to Gray that this is the Adventurers Guild and asks him to forgive her for yesterday. And Gray says, "Morning. He thanks you for your concern. His name is Halceria. He's an A+ adventurer and a member of the Valkyries." The other one says it's time to go. She then asks Gray why he's suddenly interested in their relationship with the Valkyries. He explains that he'll handle it, and she reveals that she's known him for a long time, as Emiliasen asked about him. He leaves and she asks about the team. He says they broke up for the usual reasons and shows her 6 former comrades. When Gray explains that their rank rose quickly, but they were in a different country and a mid-level team, the man reveals that the Lord wants to meet with the Valkyries to contact S-rank adventurers, and believes it is beneficial for both sides, but does not know the opinions of Emilia and the others. She reveals that dungeon exploration has piqued their interest, and he offers Isuk and Fio dinner to learn their reasons for wanting to become adventurers. Then Gray says that as a father he would cry, and then explains that it was delicious. Another man talks about the fir tree needles. He asks if the hero was chosen. He explains that he only took on easy tasks and ate delicious food morning, afternoon, and evening. The woman explains that they were recommended because the team was all female. She then asks Gray to forgive her and forget what she said. He explains that a high-ranking team received a request from a country and says that knowledge of the game would be helpful in times like these. He announces his return, and the children rejoice. He admits he's glad Isuka isn't a hero. Meanwhile, Gray returns and confirms the names of Nina, Lottie, and Stelma. Nina turns to her dad to show him something. The children call the man Daddy. He is happy and thanks them. Then Gray says they should buy frames for the drawings that are fire, water, and impact resistant. He explains that Dad squeezed them too hard and promises to be a wonderful father. He explains that arm wrestling is a fight with your hands, and explains the rules. The winner is the one who pins the opponent's hand. At the same time, she offers to do the laundry. He asks to clean the bathroom, and the man says that they also want to help, and someone reminds Nastia that it's time to sleep. Gray suggests discussing fencing after cleaning. The girl agrees, and the woman warns the children and keeps count while they wash their feet in the barrel. He also yells that he fell and asks if Isuka is okay. The woman explains that Isuka is alive, and the children say they need to check if he's hurt. Gray says they don't want to repeat Isuka-kun's mistake and expresses appreciation for his efforts. Isuka-kun apologizes, and the other boy finds it funny. Besides, thanks to their teamwork, they got the job done quickly. The girl asks to tell her daddy that she helped a lot, and the man offers everyone something to eat, as they must be tired. She praises the delicious food and asks Stelmachan to finish it, which he agrees to. Gray thanks her and promises to clean up, while the woman goes shopping, asking him not to forget coffee for Gray and Fio. In the end, he explains that first there will be a potty and then nap time and calls the children to the potty, and he calls his sister Arya and the potty. Gray explains that he can't sleep, and he remains silent, and she smiles, watching them. After which they say that they want to become adventurers, and the woman offers them to work in the city, for example in a store or a guild, to avoid risk. She says that the two can choose their own future since Gray helped them. When he says that reading and writing come first, and she thanks him and agrees with him. He says he needs to write to Daddy. Gray explains that he needs paper and charcoal, and she smiles. He then explains that she's on time and asks him to wake the others. She's surprised, says his hair is a mess, and asks if he went to bed late. He says he's going to wake everyone up. The woman reminds him it's time to get up. Gray notes that he wants to sleep, and the other child praises him for getting up on his own. After this, he orders them to go to the battlefield, grabs the girl who screams no, and the other girl swallows water from a bucket. Gray informs Ariamel that there are no tasks today and offers to eat. Ariamel refuses to cook dinner due to the problems she's caused. Meanwhile, Dad is at home. The woman asks him about work. He answers. A man tells Gray about a suspicious elf trader and asks what it could mean. And then a man consoles Stella. Another warns that the danger comes only from him, and Gray figures out what's wrong with her. The man says their job is to protect citizens. The children ask them not to hurt their father, but he apologizes and says it looks like he's mocking them. At the same time, she says that when they were dressed in rags, they didn't care about them at all. Then she invites Gray to go, and he explains that he's fine and thanks her, after which she apologizes for the disturbance. Gray admits that he couldn't protect them, but helping the children was the best decision in his life. Besides, he is surprised, and she says that she cannot believe what she heard. The man asks if they are too surprised. The girl exclaims, and Gray tells her, "Hey!" He also says that the children were the reason for buying the house, and another man adds that they were not the only ones. He says the finances and appearance coincided perfectly. The man explains that he did something unexpected for his face. He ended up remarking on the taste of the food, causing the girl to admire him. Gray reports good news, and the girl and the man wish him a good day. After which she announces that she'll be going shopping with Lena today. Lena shouts her name, and he explains that they've already become good friends. Gray announces that work is over, and the man talks about Lena and Ariamel's friendship and suggests stopping by the store for some tea. Gray is surprised to be home early and thinks about the upcoming dinner. When he refuses, the other insists on talking. Gray told Ariamel she shouldn't have waited there. Ariamel replied that she wasn't apologizing and was helping the family, apologizing for the inconvenience. Then Ariamel says that she is simple and he agrees. Gray says he's happy to see her having fun with Lena, whom he introduced them to, and she replies, "So what?" He then promises to spoil Nina, and she agrees. He says it makes him happy, and Nina adds that her dad likes it too. Gray hugs two people while the two next to him refuse. The girl asks Gray if she can come over, and he agrees. Meanwhile, he hugs a girl and a boy, who reciprocate, and the boy with short hair looks at them with a smile. He screams and swings the knife, and Gray tells him to step aside. Then the woman asks Gray to teach the two of them fencing. She explains that they were trying to help around the house and learn to read. Gray considers her disapproval and agrees to do it for their own good. The man tells Isuka to rest and hands the job over to Fio, who agrees. Fio explains that preparations for departure must be completed and agrees to leave. At the same time, Gray calls the hero a saint, and the man asks if he said anything. Gray replies no. He says the hero's scope is more like something out of a book and asks for his name. The girl explains that the hero, from a neighboring kingdom, has special significance to the fairy people. According to her fairy friend, they are traveling through a forest, which arouses suspicion. He explains that he has heard of elves' ability to perceive F. Besides, Ariamel is late. He decides to check. Someone asks about Nina, Stella, and Lutz's sleep. Then the three children fall asleep together. He notes that they've been working really hard lately, and Gray nods in response. Moreover, He claims that the hero's goal is to protect children regardless of the circumstances. The woman asks if he is a visitor, and Gray says he will take care of it and suggests that he continue studying. In the end, he asks who came, and she explains that she came with information, after which he says that's good. She asks why they broke up. He explains that there's no specific reason, they just grew apart, and that it happens everywhere. After which he explains that he doesn't know about Amelia's admirers and nobles, but doubts such things are of interest. She says that's all he'll get out of her and is surprised they just parted ways. She prepares dinner, he says that they have already eaten. She is surprised. When she woke up, she blushed and said that she would go wash her face. Gray holds the girl in his arms. She laughs. He then offers to help Ariamel with dinner, and she asks permission to do it alone. The man says he's seeing the house for the first time and offers to take some food. Gray understands and is surprised that this might be a transition. Following this, the man tells that some guys at the inn and guild tavern were asking about Ariamel, and warns to be careful, explaining that they were dressed like mercenaries or adventurers, but behaved decently. Gray says helping is a natural thing and refuses to offer thanks. Lena asks what kind of pot it is and explains that her dad came over and shared some soup. Meanwhile, he says he'll be back late and asks her to go to bed without him. She agrees. The others say they'll wash their hands and eat soup. He asks who has come at this hour. Another explains that they are on behalf of the aristocrats, searching for a girl named Ariamel, and introduce themselves as members of the Night Misthawk mercenary order. And then Gray explains that aristocrats need to hire a high-ranking adventurer without the restrictions of the law, and the adventurer's certificate is a guild card with a contract and penalties for violation. He claims to be confident of their mistrust, warns them of the possibility of being exposed while pretending, and declares that he intends to reveal the truth. At the same time, he thanks them and says he wants to talk about a girl named Ariamel. The man asks the name of the person who hired them, clarifying that they are mercenaries and not accustomed to this kind of thing. Gray asks if they won't tell him anything. He explains that his children have already gone to bed and suggests choosing another day if there are any further questions. The man says he doesn't want to stain the house he shares with his children with blood. Gray also clarifies that their friends are also at the back entrance of this house, while the other man confirms his understanding. He explains that the house belonged to a women's group and that it was difficult to break into because of the strong doors and magical window protection, and the other says that that's all for today, but they will visit again tomorrow. Gray also explains that the enemies are likely waiting for the right moment to strike and may leave Ariamel alive while silencing the others. He admits he doesn't like sneak attacks and will let her escape this time, but the girl calls out to him. He says the man is holding a girl, possibly not his, and it looks suspicious. The other man thinks he's a hooligan. In the end, Gray explains that if they tell the bishop, that's all for today. He explains that when Soma's guys join, they'll come back here again, and he's surprised that's the man's name. He asks who it is, and he, with a bloody sword and a sinister smile, says that they are going to leave, leaving behind trash. After which, Gray explains that his man grabbed and knocked out a resistor who was doing something to his house. He demands to know why they're looking for Ariamel and where the bishop is, promising to hand over the wounded man if he gets the answers. He reports a living bishop and demands his rescue, then orders him to die. Another explains that he is too fast. When he shouts that he is not afraid, Gray explains that he has no intention of giving up. He offers to find her a bride and asks about his leader. She doesn't know how Amelia will react, but she thinks she'll simply blush and feel embarrassed. Gray then explains that the noise in the city can be reduced, pointing to the warriors' locations. The girl explains that there are 5 warriors, including 1 in luxurious attire, 1 in a bright white suit, and 2 in suits similar to those on the ground. She informs him that Harsalia is an excellent archer and scout, and he claims that he will go with her and trusts her, as the leader of the house will be angry if she returns. Following this, Gray explains that he entrusted Amelia with guarding the children at home, noting her strength and the need to befriend Ariamel. Outside Bastic, one of them asks why there have been no answers for so long and receives an apology for the lack of new information. She explains that Saint Ariamel was picked up in the city by an adventurer. The man explains that adventurers are a miserable bunch who don't live long, but will pay the required sum of money. Meanwhile, he explains that if they learn about the saint, they might make excessive demands. However, if that happens, there are many ways to deal with it. He has assigned 3 knights to verify whether the saint is truly in the adventurer's house, although they are still wandering around. He explains the need to retrieve the saint and return to Storia, talks about his dream of becoming a parishioner, and offers to silence the opponent or kick him out of the house if negotiations fail. And then he says that Ariamel, too, will be separated from her loved ones. He asks who they are and if they need anything from them. The man explains that they were sent away, and the woman says there's nothing worse than the tedious wait. At the same time, one shouts that he won't forgive, and the other asks, "Is this really your highness?" The old man demands silence and explains that it's their own fault for failing to carry out the task. The man explains that he has come to settle the matter, and Gray asks how much he wants and how much it will cost to hand the saint over to them. Moreover, the old man clarifies that virginity does not matter, orders him to leave, and then demands that the adventurer be killed, turning to Alice. He remains silent, the man in white armor yells at him, the other man gets up from the ground, and the two discuss how the hero is just a child and doesn't live up to the image, but the man in white armor is probably more experienced. He also reports that Halceria is temporarily absent and explains that the hero and the Holy Knight are confronting the adventurer. Gray decides to take the hero out of the game, while the other man shouts, "Get lost," and claims that he can handle it himself, demanding that they not interfere. He ends up screaming to die happy and delivers a powerful blow, and the elf notices an explosion in the distance. She says it's not much, the man with the sword shouts, "Damn," and the other explains that the guy is a simple adventurer. After which one expresses an opinion about castrating rapists, and the other is surprised and swears, trying to fight back. Gray calls himself a psycho, saying he was able to push him away using amplifying magic. As he shouts that the enemy must die, he strikes the enemy in the back with an arrow. Gray strikes the man. 3 warriors with weapons watch the creature making the sound. Then he talks about Dad's switch and the boy asks where Dad is. Gray explains that he is here and everything is fine, and the child screams for Daddy and calls for him while the two watch from behind a tree. Following this, one talks about the possibility of taking second place, while the other suggests settling the situation by compensating for damages. The man claims everyone needs the money. Gray says he's already received payment for 4, which surprises the other man. Meanwhile, the man says that he is not the one to whom he should pray, and even God is tired of waiting, and the other begs for mercy and admits his mistake. Gray asks what it is, and the woman explains that she must give it to him before she dies, explains that the stones are from the men who were left to look after the horses, and asks if he has any teleportation stones, explaining that the horses have been released and the cart is now useless. And then he hits the man, who screams, after which his hand falls to the ground next to the objects. The man says that the man was still trying to escape using the hidden teleportation stone and calls him a stubborn bastard, telling him to just die already. Gray says he has a few questions and asks Alice to answer them. He confirms that he turned 13 this year. He says he doesn't remember his age because he was abandoned at the orphanage. He claims to be the same age as Ariamel. Another man remarks that the dead don't need money. It's compensation for the inconvenience. The woman says that's mean. Moreover, Gray claims that after defeating the bandits, he can do with their belongings as he pleases. He clarifies that there is a lot of valuables there, and compensation for the damage includes compensation for the inconvenience. She says she needs money to send the guy home. He asks her to keep quiet if everything is clear and explains that he'll use the money to remove the bodies. The man also asks Gray to stay at the hotel for 2 nights. The other man offers to trade exploits, to which Gray agrees. The man advises him to rest and promises to return in the morning. He thanks her for paying for the room, promises to pay her back, explains that the money is not his and says goodbye. He finally explained to Gray and thanked Harsalia. She asked what to do with the brave man. The woman explained she wasn't surprised by his rescue, and the other woman said Gray knew him. He explains that Ares was separated from his friends back home and plans to consult with his children about placing him with them. The girl decides to go home, despite the warnings, and the others also say it's time for them to go home. He asks Ariamel if she's gone to bed yet, after which she describes a terrible dream, and Gray promises to save her, even if she is in danger. She notes the darkness and cold, wonders about the place and her stay there, then points out the need to return home as Nina and the others are hungry and asks about the availability of food. When she says that she is the eldest in the family and must be strong, she wonders how she can return home. He reports that the hut in which they lived burned down completely. Gray then tells them that she is a saint, chosen by God's providence, and asks them to love and pity each other. He apologizes to the woman. She is surprised and asks if this is a joke. The masked man and the woman behind him demand the boys be returned, repeating that they've had enough of the jokes. Following this, she screams curses, wishes a painful death for everyone, then says that she said these words, died, stuck a knife into herself and asks for forgiveness for not being able to save Iskra, Theo, Rats, Stella, and Nina. She is surprised by the warmth, explaining that her mom and dad are keeping her warm. Meanwhile, Gray asks if he forgave her for waking up and is surprised, and he explains that he doesn't remember that she had a nightmare and was not herself. He warned her that she could catch a cold sleeping on the couch and asked her not to wait for him there. She apologized and said she wanted to tell him something when she got back. And then she says welcome back, and Gray is surprised. He says that in his past life he returned home in a gloomy mood, where no one was waiting for him, and only memories strangled his heart. At the same time, he says that she is at home. He says that he wants to be a family for the children, explains that these are his true thoughts, and asks to leave the words as they are. He also asks if she can put on her sock herself. She says yes and asks her dad for help. He agrees to help. Gray thinks that becoming a bed for children is a brilliant idea. In addition, the child asks to stop and do everything calmly, quickly and without haste. He shouts that everything is on Lutsk, and she asks if everything is okay, and he continues to sit in the bathroom. Eventually the child asks for a drink. Gray explains that he is quick and quiet like his dad, and picks up the other child. He reports that Nina and Stella have already left and that he will soon approach Rats. After which Gray explains that this is normal, calms him down and promises to wipe his dirty pants. He says theory and logic don't apply to small children. The man insists he can't lie down, otherwise Nina and the others will attack him. When the girl calls her father for breakfast, Gray clarifies that his name is Arya. The man says it's time to eat and explains that he's decided to become food for the children. Ares explains that his name is Ares. The group of listeners is silent and agrees. Gray then explains that Ares's position as a holy knight is kept secret from the Braves and the women's church, and the children explain that they are carrying plates and agree with this. He claims they are hammers and she explains that they are everything. Following this, he opens the door, notices the house, yawns and rubs his neck. The bartender asks Gray if he would like to order, and Gray asks for what the bartender recommends. Meanwhile, he puts an ice cube on the table and drinks the drink. Gray reports that the meeting place remains in a remote area, and then he explains that the territory of Storia in Kodar is vast, so the price is too high, and specifies that the work will cost 400 gold coins, after which he concludes, agreed. Gray explains that the investigation will take several days and he won't pocket the advance. The man warns he'll kill him if he doesn't do as he knows, and Gray says he'll go take care of business. At the same time, he explains that he was worried about the boy, and the man asks if he was keeping an eye on him and notes that he was there for a long time. She greets Gray and asks if something is wrong, then asks if Ares lives with them, and Gray explains that he came for the address from the room and is not interested in Ares yet. She also says she doesn't think he's a bad person, but he's a bit gloomy and acts like an adult. He asks if she meant to say something else. Gray claims that in history he only walked from his room to the training ground and back, and probably hasn't gone shopping for 100 years, and suggests not paying attention and buying everything he needs. He also offers apples, and he tells how, in the orphanage, small apples seemed like a luxury compared to the usual food for the brave. Gray says food tastes better when eaten with family, and he agrees. Ultimately, he says that since meeting his children, the table has become more fun and the food has become tastier. He's willing to do anything to maintain this lifestyle and now feels happy. Gray announces Ariamel's arrival, and she asks if he's Aries. Gray invites her in, and Ariamel suggests they gather the children in the living room and relax while she makes tea. After which he explains that history calls the girl Armamel a saint. He explains that they are his precious family, and the other man says everything is fine and they leave. He admits his guilt over Ariamel's departure and decides to support the boy. Afterwards, Isuka and Fio greet each other and introduce themselves. When Gray explains that he has come, the girl is surprised and exclaims. He orders it to stop, the girl begs for help, the man wants to continue watching, the second man pretends not to notice. Then he asks what happened, and she is surprised that she became Alesh's sister. She wonders why Nina is the older sister, and Nina explains that she was the first to come to this house, and Alice only showed up today. Following this, Gray explains that it is now clear. She thinks in order who came to this house, and the other is surprised and says that he understands. He reports that Fio and Ariamel warmly welcomed their guest, Aries, and all the children showed a new side of themselves. Meanwhile, Gray explains that Stella and Rats never get attached to anyone and have lost interest in the address, and he remains silent when a stranger is around. Nina decides to give the candy to the new guest, but ends up eating it herself. The guest offers Aries the choice of room and he accepts, and then he asks Aries to wait a minute, offers to go out into the yard, and she explains that she always relaxes on the edge, and he calls her the brave one of prophecy. Gray explains that he can't take Aries away by force, but if he finds his friends from the shelter, he will probably leave, and the man is ready to provide temporary help. At the same time, he asks if he knows how to use magic, explains that he had a teacher in Storia, and reflects on the appearance of the Demon King and what he can do for Aries, who is destined to fight him, after which he strikes with his sword. He agrees to register as an adventurer and acknowledges the need to develop his skills. Furthermore, Gray asks if all adventurers are as strong as him, and the other explains that he is a B+ adventurer rank. He says Londi forced him to participate in mock fights to test his abilities. He admits he couldn't do anything, so Londi laughed, hit, stomped, and spat on him. The other man says it's all different. Gray also explains that every time he lost, he heard that his weakness was to blame, and thought for a long time about why he was forcibly separated from his loved ones, after which he says that he was right to kill the criminal. He asks if he will become stronger by becoming an adventurer and if he will be able to be with Mia and the others if he increases his strength. Ultimately, Gray claims that Aries will become stronger and will be able to surpass him in the future. He explains that the most important thing is that Kozar's head stays in place. Even if they survive, they could be sold at auction. Therefore, all the owners must be killed. He also says that everything depends on the informant, whether he can be with his friends. He won't rest no matter what they tell him. After which Gray says that you need to focus on the goal and explains that the main thing is not the title of brave man, but self-development. He said he'd go wash off the dirt before dinner and thanked her for the training. She agreed. When Gray asks what he's doing here, Fio explains that they have training tomorrow. He says that tomorrow until evening they will be carrying out a guild assignment with Aries, and then plans to conduct training with him before dinner, and is surprised that they have already arrived. Then Gray laughs and he apologizes and says that he washed his hands after Gray's question. He admits he can't cook. She insists it's no problem. He assures her he can always learn. She then asks for help with the children at night, explaining that the little ones often need to pee. Gray jokes about Rats's footprints, and she suggests using body enhancement magic, but he declines due to the increased workload. The girl says she's coming in, but the man remains silent. He's surprised, and she asks Gray to bring some tomatoes. He thanks her. Meanwhile, Gray says good morning to Aries. He's surprised and quickly runs off. Gray explains that breakfast isn't ready yet and offers to wash his hands. The woman asks what's wrong. The man replies he doesn't know. She greets Gray and Arya. He says that Address is very nervous and saw him running. The girl explains that Address simply woke up early, when breakfast wasn't ready yet. Then he asks Arya if she slept in Gray's room. She explains that she'll sleep there because the other kids often go to the bathroom at night, and she understands that. She is sure that he has misunderstood everything and decides to wake up Iska, who tells her that he heard Iska and Theo making noise on the second floor and returns to preparing breakfast with Ariamel. At the same time, Gray is washing 3 children. Ariamel is wiping Nina's mouth, Stella is putting Ratsu on a plate, and Theo is angry at Iska. He says that after breakfast they will help with the dishes together, and he is surprised and repeats the name Aries. Furthermore, Gray clarifies that registering under his real name will not allow changes, and offers Isk a short sword, to which he agrees. He wants to quickly register his interlocutor and take on a few quests. They come to the Adventurers Guild, and he agrees. Additionally, Gray informs you of the need to help Aries gain achievements and experience in battles with goblins or orcs before discussing assignments. He explains that Aries' rank is still E, he is not trusted to form a group and go on errands, and he will not be able to go with him all the time. Eventually, Gray reveals his name and realizes that the wolves avoid him out of survival instinct, and that the wolf family is suited for group fighting. He completed the registration but didn't change his name. She reminded him of this. He explained that the name was the only gift from his parents, whom he had never met. After which, Gray explains that he'll initially be taking on goblin-killing missions and asks about his experience. The man explains that he's fought them and orcs, while another man suggests requeuing, suspecting Gray is deceiving newcomers. He mentioned Gray's cowardice and warned that such adventurers would become extinct. The man criticized the group's low level. The woman asked about Gray's acquaintance, to which the newcomer replied that he would train him. When she's with him, the tasks become easier. She asks them both to be careful, and he agrees. Gray reports that they are near Bastic, and Aries asks him to stop. He then instructs Aries to kill the enemies when they get close. Aries says they need to do it before the resistance starts and confirms that they're heading for Bastic. He attacks the goblins, and Gray confidently declares that they will kill them. Following this, he explains that there are not many of them, and specifies that Aries is more precise. Gray says he'll take on the huge goblins and orcs on both sides and asks if he can kill the rest. He explains that he'll lead them away first and kill the most dangerous ones, and she should kill the rest. Gray explains that this time he'll strengthen them with magic and that many of the goblins have already been killed. Meanwhile, he clarifies that the number of goblins will gradually decrease so that no one escapes. He says they are coming, and the other asks to wait, while many goblins shout and wave their weapons. And then the orcs scream and make sounds, and one of them smiles with sharp teeth. Gray attacks the monster, who is surprised. He explains that it has been resisting for too long. At the same time, he strikes, cutting off the opponent's head. Gray parries the blow and delivers a powerful blow, causing the monsters to react in horror. Moreover, he holds no ill will toward those before him, despite the loss of many of his subordinates. He then strikes the enemy, who is surprised and retreats. Gray hits his enemies with enhancement magic. He asks if it's really his magic. He also expresses regret at missing the opportunity to see the battle and explains that it is necessary to prevent escape while the goblins scream and try to escape. He considers this way of fighting to be vile and base towards the knights, and asks what it means to fight according to the rules while the crowd moves forward. In the end, Gray reports that he has destroyed all the enemies and is ready to move forward. He asks if he can leave the orcs to Ares, and the creature explains that this is impossible. After which the goblin attacks, and Gray explains that he is getting used to fighting despite almost complete experience. He strikes the enemy with his horn. When he tells Ares that he better remember everything he says, Ares replies that it is good. Gray reports headaches and difficulty concentrating. He then explains that he couldn't look at it, but it seemed like the other one took one. He laughs and explains that it will be a souvenir, holding up the severed head. After this, he asks who exactly, and next to him there are 3 monsters with open mouths. He asks if even the goblin warrior will really get a rank up, and Gray explains that he will write it down but Ares will still get a rank up. Meanwhile, she claims that it is useless, then admits that he is right and will pass the exam this time, and he asks not to interfere. Gray says he'd be strong against the goblins. He apologizes for the delay and asks if he should go home. The girl asks for help. and then she is surprised that it is him, and the other girl says that this boy was with him. She asks him not to drag it out, and he tells her to go. The man explains that he shouldn't have helped. Another asks how things are, and the man explains that he doesn't believe in a surprise visit with gifts. At the same time, Gray says that she is surprised by the coincidence and asks what he is doing. She says the Howling Maidens are a crew of adventurers who attract the attention of royalty. She asks if this is the guy he was talking about. He explains his name is Ares, and he's a simple victim of history. The other is surprised. In addition, Amelia works as an adventurer in this city. Ares also begins to work in this field, and Gray offers to contact him in unclear situations. He suggests continuing the conversation inside, but the girl asks him not to come in. After exchanging greetings, the girl agrees to pour tea for the guest at the man's request. Gray also asks if these are addresses. He explains that he's saying hello to everyone, and the man replies, "This is Amelia." He explains that these are gifts and suggests they eat with the children. She asks if she can. He says naturally, since she brought them. He suggests they eat the sweets when Ariamel brings the tea. Finally, she announces that the tea is ready and turns to Gray. He explains that Amelia brought cake and that they need more plates and forks. She agrees and promises to bring them. She prepared plenty of sweets and tea so that one could ask for more, and Gray admires her strength. After which he speaks. She is surprised, the man explains. Gray is surprised. Two children are holding hands and pulling him. When he explains what they confess to, and he's surprised, the others listen. Then the man sits down on a bench and the two look at him. She wishes her a bon appetit. Gray is surprised by the speed, and the others eat and chat at the table. Then he asks the girl if it's tasty. The girl happily confirms and says she's happy. There's a crumb on her cheek. Gray says that dinner should be good. Stella is happy and agrees, and he offers her only half of the dessert. He then says he'll take it too and asks if he's sure, and the other man shouts that he's doing it. He assures her not to worry, and she shouts that he will be hers. Gray is surprised when she calls him Little Sister Fafip, and he asks her to always do so. She helps with the dishes. Meanwhile, she reports that she became good friends with the children thanks to the game together and often pulled out the joker. He said it was time to take a bath as it was getting late and asked Amelia if she would stay with them overnight. And then she is surprised that he offers to spend the night. Gray refuses, but Emma insists on returning home and asks to continue the game. At the same time, he agrees, and the girl with long hair shouts hooray, showing the phone, while the others look at her. The woman says that the bath is ready for Amelia, and he replies that he will take her last. Gray also claims that the hot water will cool down and the children need time, and also reassures that there is no need to worry so much. He advises against sitting if she's sleepy and suggests lying down. He asks Emily to wait. Besides, Gray agrees that nothing can be done as long as two people are sleeping on his lap. He says he's been able to compliment Amelia for a long time, but she usually ignored him or responded modestly. So he's never seen her happy face, and she's surprised that someone called her beautiful. She finally asks him why he's lost in thought, and he says nothing and suggests they go put the kids to bed. She agrees and explains that she'll go put Rats and Nina to bed, and he'll take Stella. She asks if she can put Nina to bed, as she is already asleep. After which Gray asks, and she replies, "Of course." He explains that the children usually sleep with him due to the toilet and other reasons, and the girl suggests that Amelia and Nina sleep in her room today. When the man said he'd agree if Amelia didn't mind, she agreed. The girl called Amelia, and Gray, surprised, asked what was going on. Amelia nervously replied that she understood. She said good night and he said the same. Gray then explains that Dad has switched to Santa. The woman wishes him luck, and the man laughs. He explains that the next morning has arrived and covers the sleeping people with a blanket. Following this, Gray calls them sleepyheads. The girl says that it is warm and cozy to sleep with children. Another girl greets them and wishes them good morning. She apologizes for refusing the bento. He thanks her. In the meantime, she is grateful to Gray. She wishes the boys all the best. Gray, Ares, and Emilia receive their bento. Gray is surprised they were prepared in time and asks for more. And then he tells Emilia to come over, she says goodbye, and he promises to come. The girl thanks Ariamel and says she even prepared the food. She says she had fun with him and will be waiting for him to tell her something interesting again. The man explains that Emilia Buoto did something that made her uncomfortable, and Aries seems strange. The woman explains that they should have talked to each other at least once. At the same time, he argues that it is important to have a family, and Gray agrees with him. She expressed a desire to meet her father, mother, and older sisters, but doubted their readiness. Moreover, Gray denies his thoughts, while the woman claims that Emilia's father is an aristocrat, and she ran away from home to become Cassia's friend from childhood, repeating to her. She says it's time to say goodbye, apologizing for the sudden visit. He explains that the children will be glad to see her again, then apologizes and says it's time for them to go. She says goodbye and promises to meet at the guild. He also asks what is wrong, and Gray is surprised and asks what his relationship is with Emilia. He asks why everyone is so interested, and the other explains that perhaps Gray has many wives. Finally, in the suburbs of Bastic, 8 years ago, a man welcomed the arrival. He reports that passenger carriages do not have a special escort at this time of year, and orders that everyone, including guests and guards, be taken prisoner. After which, the man shouts at the boy to stop. Another man orders him to run away, and the boy runs in panic while the woman calls for her sister, who is being held tied up. Sasha announces her appointment as the new registrar of the Bastic Adventurers Guild and asks the boy if he is lost. When he entered, he explained that he could get help here. He said that robbers had seized his sister and father, but he had managed to escape. Gray screams that he is in pain, and she asks him to tell her again in detail what happened. He then tells that they boarded a cart to go to the Bastic festival, but they were attacked by robbers, and he asks them to save his family and the villagers. She tells him that today is Bastic's annual celebration. He screams and says he was scared, but is glad he got through it. Following this, the festival lasts 3 days, filled with stalls and parades. During the celebration, many people arrive from neighboring villages. Bastic increases security in the towns, but due to the large distances between them, the guards are lighter. With the increase in visitors, the number of criminals targeting, he asks, explaining that joining the guild is good luck for a child. Meanwhile, he explains that these are seeds, and the two women listen silently. She says they'll take it as a mission and asks what to do. The other explains they need to hurry to help, otherwise it might be too late, adding that this won't do. And then she explains that saving people from bandits for a few coppers will cost lives even for adventurers. Gray says he can't relax, he must always be on guard and ready to fight. At the same time, he asks what is going on. The girl explains that a boy came to the guild with an order about bandits. He explains that there are no lower limits on the fee, and demands that a form be drawn up immediately. Gray reports that this is a large gang of bandits with a large sum of money. She's also surprised by his decision to go alone, as he's never been in a team before. He explains that he'll be going solo because his team recently disbanded. He explains that the holiday was caused by the large number of people in the carriage. He explains that their idiot got hurt trying to catch up with the boy. Another says he escaped alone and there's no problem. A third explains that the boy won't be able to hire adventurers and take revenge. He also advises to direct anger towards the family, leaving the daughter aside since she is still a child, and adds that he does not care about selling children. He points to another entrance, asks about the noise, asks what fell, and shouts that the guards must work without making unnecessary noise. Eventually, Gray explains that it's not a question and threatens to kill him for attacking the cart. He claims that the Papulitsky switch is quiet, after which Gray explains that he can't sleep, and Anna smiles and closes her eyes, lying on the bed. He attended lectures on medicinal herbs, sold materials, and skillfully fought enemies. Ares grew and shed the habit of closing his eyes during battle. When Theo showed her magic last night, he notes his lack of awareness of his actions, while Gray reports the children's impressive progress, which is alarming, and mentions a chance encounter with an orc. Then she explains that she accepts it, and he remains silent. Gray says he's going home. The man greets him and asks if he's going home now. Following this, he announces that he has business to attend to and will take a detour while the other one returns home. Gray greets him and tells him the clock is ticking. The man asks if he's learned anything. Gray replies that perhaps his life with Ares will come to an end. Meanwhile, the orphanage in Kodar no longer exists, and in its place there are now new Philu retail outlets. Gray asks Philu about the trading company and its activities. Philu explains that nobles and clergy are hiding slaves, despite the ban on slavery. And then he asks if he really wants to deal with these bastards, and he explains where to look for those who keep children as slaves. He clarifies that the slave company is called Zannies. One of the nobles was an ordinary merchant, but behind the scenes he offered his services to the nobility and clergy in exchange for illegal goods. Meanwhile, Gray talks about a coup d'état, while another explains that the only one who actually assigned them was a guy named Rondi. He also mentions a group of holy knights who were unrivaled by ordinary warriors. He asks what happened to the holy knights, and the other man explains that more than half of the knights, including the head of Raisin, are the instigators of the coup. Furthermore, Gray explains that in history, high-ranking officials with their holy knights suddenly took control of the cathedral. He asks if he has children among his personal property and explains that this coincidence will be to his advantage, and the other confirms that there are children. Furthermore, Gray explains that the main child is a boy whose family is a special asset, and asks if the slave owner knows about the arrival of Episcopa and Ares on Bastic. He asks if the coup d'état is connected to the Brave One, and explains that it is more easily understood as a great moral duty, after which the other man says that then one should just wait. Finally, Gray says it would be rude not to meet him, since he came to this city himself. The other man asks if they're happy and confirms they are. He says he will wait for the next requests and asks the scout to look for information, and he explains that he now looks like a robber attacking merchants. After which the woman explains that she can't help but agree. The other woman says that this is just Gray's style. Gray promises to have the wagon ready for tomorrow and asks them to wait. He thanks them and explains that they often have to rely on him. Gray asks them to let him know if they need help and assures them that he will do the same next time. When he talks about the need to be more restrained in his desires, she lists possible requests while the two listen intently. Gray grew up in a village and dreamed of becoming an adventurer. He is kind, strong, and possesses an unbending will and courage that almost everyone admires. He then explains that the beast will eat the boy and is not worth saving. It is better to think about money because monsters often attack children and kill them. At this time he repels the attack of the beast. Gray says he's a fool as the wolves approach from the forest. Following this, he says that this is the bad luck of the poor, and decides to run away from here, but realizes that it is too late. Gray reports being rescued, but is surrounded and attacked by wolves. Meanwhile, he warns against the risks and offers a deal. Wolf fangs for a drink. Gray orders him to return to the village without his help because of the boy's bad looks. The boy apologizes and thanks him, and then he says that his name is being called and asks if he can hear the name of the person he is talking to. Rando said that he didn't need to remember Gray since they would never meet again, and Gray said that at that moment he decided to become an adventurer. At the same time, he encountered a monster and prepared himself for death. He remembered that back and decided to become a hero like that man.